Hey, what's going on? So, I've had a question. How can you change your thinking, especially when you have intrusive thoughts, right? Like, thoughts that come and, you're just kicking it, watching TV, you're trying to get a snack, whatever it is, and boom, you got this thought that just like comes in, right? And it's not a thought that you want. And sometimes it's a thought that you're like, oh my gosh, why am I thinking about that? Like, it's maybe a girlfriend that you have or had, and you don't really want to think about that old girlfriend and how that all ended, all that kind of stuff, right? So what do? And, speaking about intrusive thoughts specifically, the first thing you got to remember is that just because you have a thought, it doesn't necessarily like mean anything. Because sometimes you'll have a thought about you'll have a fight with your wife or something or your girlfriend, and you'll have this thought like, man, I should, hit her in the head with the iron, or, whatever, like some extreme thing. And you're like, oh no, I don't want to think about that. And a lot of times when people think about thoughts like that, well, when they have thoughts like that, many times they're like, oh my gosh, how can I think like that? I don't want to think that, because you feel like just because you think it, that it means something. And the most important thing to remember, and science and evidence shows this, is that a thought's just a thought. The brain just cranks out thoughts. That's what it does. Like, given no input whatsoever, your brain is just going to think. It's going to crank out thoughts, And so many times those thoughts are not necessarily ones that we want. We're like, gee, brain, why won't you think about something, like, I don't know, today's lotto numbers? That would be useful. Think about that. But instead, your brain's thinking about, hitting your wife with the curling iron or whatever it is. So the most important thing is to remember that just because you have a thought, it doesn't mean that it's you, and it doesn't mean it's yours. One of the amazing things about thought and being human is that, you get to choose whether a thought is yours or whether it's just a thought that you're going to decide that you don't claim it all. It's not true. It'll never be true. You love your wife, you love your dog, whatever it is, right? So that's the first thing. Remember that just because the thought happened in your head doesn't make it yours, and you get to choose whether or not you want to claim that thought as who you are, who you want to be, or how you want to be. So the second thing is to sort of step back, what cognitive behavioral therapy calls dropping anchor, right? So if you're caught in this, thought pattern and you can't get out of it, and it's like swirling and swirling and swirling, what people that deal with depression, they call that rumination, where you've like something happened, you lost a wife, you lost a dog, you did something, crazy at work, and everybody's going to talk about you, and there's, embarrassment, and your mind's just going round and round and round and just keeps over and over and over again, right? That's called rumination. And so you want to break that. And the way that you do that is you do what's called dropping anchor. And dropping anchor is really simple. It does require some practice, like everything good. Most everything requires practice. And so what you want to do is you want to take notice of what's really happening, right? You want to stop that brain train. So stop the brain train. That's the first key. Because some of the time, that brain train is a runaway brain train. So you got to stop it. And the way you do that is that you take 4 breaths in through your nose. Hold it for 2 seconds. You do that 4 times, right? So you're going to do that. And that will get you, a little bit calmer and more relaxed. Then you want to take note of 4 things that are in your environment. Something you're smelling, something you're tasting, something that you can see, and something that you can hear, right? So you want to engage your senses. And by engaging your senses, you are externalizing awareness. And when you externalize awareness, you break that brain train. So that's the first step, is to stop the brain train, to get control back, get off that runaway train that can happen sometimes. So 2 things we learned in this video. The first is your thoughts are just thoughts, that you have the choice to decide whether or not you claim them as you, as somebody you want to be, whatever it is. They're just thoughts. And that just because you have them, that doesn't mean that they're you. Doesn't mean that's anything about you. It doesn't define you in any way. And then second, we learned how to stop the brain train, which is the 4 breath pattern. Do that as we just talked about. And then take note of 4 things: what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what you're seeing, and what you're tasting. And by doing that, you're externalizing, you're placing your awareness on the external. Okay? Now I just want to say something about panic attacks, because sometimes panic attacks can really be a problem. I'm going to cover all of that. If you want to know more about panic attacks, let me know and I'll do a video on panic attacks. But the most important thing with panic attacks, in my experience, because I've gotten to deal with those in the past, is to force yourself to stay still. Like, don't fidget. Don't, oh, this pain in my arm, oh, this chest, oh, my head. Like, just force yourself to stay still. Because in that, all that movement, all that stuff, that just drives more adrenaline, right? So, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's possible. And, so regarding panic attacks, just work with this idea of just calming the body and breathing and remembering that this has happened so many times. And so the likelihood that this is, any more meaningful than the last 20 times is pretty remote. So if you like this, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Definitely leave me a comment. Tell me how I can make this channel better. And I appreciate it, y'all. Have a good day.